All right, we now welcome on Dean Jones. He's the creator. He runs the Cat Crave blog. Dean, let's get this started. You live in Wales, right? How did you get into American football?
Through my dad, really. When I was younger, they used to have a sort of. It was on Channel 4 at the time. They used to have the Sunday games on, and he was a 49ers fan, so he'd always be watching it, and you sort of get into it that way, and sort of it's gradually progressed from just enjoying it as a kid and to sort of your teenagers, you get into the sort of the draft area of it and how that works, and then you become a fan of college football, and then you sort of sort of immerse yourself into it a little bit. And I think that's about it, really. Yeah, and then obviously because of my experience, sort of writing sport for the paper I used to work for over here as well, it just seemed like a sort of a logical transition that I wanted to do to start writing, really. But I mean, there's a lot more going on in the NFL sort of constantly daily rather than say if I was writing local sport around here, you're sort of trying to pick for stories where you can get a little more creative writing for sort of fan sided, and they do give you a lot of freedom to sort of voice your opinions and say what you want, really, as long as you've got sort of reasoning behind it. So yeah, I think that was about it, really. Loved the game for as long as I can remember. I mean, I'm 40 now, so I've probably been watching it for just over 30 years, good and bad. So yeah.
So you write for the Panthers a lot now and follow them pretty closely. Do you slowly feel yourself becoming sort of a fan of the Panthers, or what's your take on that?
Um, like we were saying before the recording, you do sort of get immersed into it. I mean, because I'm spending so much time writing about them and watching the games, interviews. I've just finished watching the All 22 because we can get that over here on the Game Pass. So yeah, you do. I wouldn't say a fan, but that works quite well for me, I think, because if you're a fan and you can be less objective about stuff rather than what I do now, I sort of look at it from a point of view as sort of from the outside looking in, rather than someone who's sort of going to games, things like that, and just becomes immersed with the sort of the passion around it, rather than taking the sort of rose tinted spectacles off and
Yeah.
looking at things in more perspective. But obviously, I'm rooting for them. Like I would say if it was like last year when the Panthers were playing the Vikings, it was a bit of a sort of a touchy one, and I've got that again this year. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. But I wouldn't say a fan, but I wouldn't say that was a bad thing because I'm still rooting for them to do really well. And sort of it's been really fascinating to write about since I took over the site, into because with the magnitude of the rebuild last year, with sort of so many leading figures within the locker room leaving, like Greg Olsen, Luke Kuechly, Cam Newton. It was just a really interesting time to take it on, and I'm loving every minute.
So let's start talking about week one. You can never complain about getting a win. It's kind of underwhelming from the offense. It feels like we should have won by 20 points at least. The defense was awesome. What's your feeling coming off week one?
I mean, it's week one, so I mean, there's a lot of overreaction about everything. I don't think the areas where they struggled were a big surprise. I mean, if you could be critical, I mean, that they should have been out of sight at halftime, really. I mean, 16-0 just didn't do them justice. I think obviously you got the fumble in the red zone, couple of missed opportunities, and obviously the kicking decision that Ryan Santoso wasn't given from over 50. I mean, it could have been 25, 26 easy when you're looking at it like that. Same sort of flat start in the third quarter that we saw a lot of last year as well. I mean that's just got to stop for me. I'm not sure what they're saying at halftime to them, but we saw it time and time again last year where they just came out flat, and it's tough to build momentum back up after that. And I think that's a lot of a testament to sort of how much they struggled, especially in the fourth quarter when games were close last year. The fact that you're having to build yourself back up after having such a flat third quarter, I mean, that's a really frustrating element for me. But there was a lot of good as well. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I thought Darnold was good. I thought his footwork was decent. He kept his eyes downfield well when there was pressure in his face, which I thought which I've not seen a lot from him on the Jets, which shows he's sort of been coached up by Sean Ryan this summer as well, which is quite encouraging for me. And obviously, I mean, the defense was just absolutely lights out first half, especially. They look a real force. I mean, I know Jets fans were sort of ridiculing our offensive line all through the week. I mean, yeah. I mean, I couldn't post anything on the Cat Crave Twitter without some Jets fans saying, "Oh, but your O line stinks." I mean, they should have been worried about theirs really, rather than laughing at ours. But that's another matter, really. But I think it was encouraging overall. I mean, there's lots to work on. I mean, it's easy to remember that you've got new players. I mean, it's a new line again. And they didn't play sort of a lot in the preseason either. They had one half in week 3 and then 2 weeks off before the regular season began. So, I mean, there's a lot to work on, but that's no great surprise, really, considering where the Panthers are and what's expected of them.
So there is one play I wanted to ask you about in particular, because I personally was at the game on Sunday and the stadium went crazy. Like, they were booing whenever we decided to punt from the 33-yard line. I just wanted to ask, what was your opinion on that? Obviously, we cut Santoso this week, so we're going in a different direction. But what did you think about that?
Yeah, I thought it was a strange one, but when you're not confident in your kicker, I mean, there's not really a lot else you can do. I mean, perhaps they're playing field position, but you kind of just think, well, the writing was on the wall for Paul Ryan, really, after that. I know he'd missed an extra point, so the leash was pretty short. Regarding and obviously you've got the 7th round draft pick as well. I know it's a 7th rounder, but at the end of the day, Scott Fitcher has had so much success with the Seahawks and sort of with late round picks. That probably means a lot to him rather than just sort of taking chances on a kicker. From there, I mean, I wouldn't have seen anything wrong in just going for it on 4th down if you're going to do anything. I mean, it's the 32-yard line, so that's where the Jets would have been starting from regardless. And after Joseph Charlton's punt, I don't think it was too much further away from there anyway. So no. A bit of a strange one, but like I say, I think it's sort of pretty much confirmed that the Panthers would be getting a new kicker this week anyway.
All right, so we saw Sam Darnold. I felt like he was just much more exciting to watch than Teddy Bridgewater. I'm sure by saying that Teddy Bridgewater's burner will be after us, but have you had any interactions with the Teddy Bridgewater burner yet?
A couple.
Okay.
I mean, there was just so many sort of at the end. You kind of didn't know which way it was coming from. But yeah, I mean,
I see him under so many posts.
Yeah,
crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of rough on Teddy, really. I mean, he didn't have McCaffrey for 13 games. I mean, his line was terrible outside of obviously Moton. No tight end production either. I mean, I don't know if that's going to change this year. Judging by what we saw from sort of Dan Arnold and Ian Thomas in the regular season opener. But like I say, I'm not even sure he was the first choice last year anyway. So I mean, it's just the contract I had a big problem with. I mean, considering Joe Brady was there last year and they'd worked together on the Saints, I think he might have taken a 1-year deal, sort of a prove-it deal, just to make sure he's got a starting opportunity somewhere, rather than give him sort of 3 years, 63 million with 33 guaranteed, I think it was. And we're still paying 17 million now, and he's obviously got off to a great start in Denver. I mean, it is the Giants, but I mean, he couldn't really done any more on Sunday from what I've seen of it. So, yeah, it's a strange one, but I suppose both sides made the bed, and now it's time to move on.
So,
all right, you go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to ask. You brought the Saints and Teddy Bridgewater. So, looking ahead to this week's matchup, do you think Jameis is going to burn us like he did this past weekend? Because he went off, and the Saints, the Packers were a good team, and the Saints destroyed him.
Yeah, he was sensational in the red zone. I'll give him that. I mean, he didn't throw for many yards, but they kind of didn't need to.
Mhm.
So I think he's sitting behind Drew Brees last year was probably the best thing that's ever happened to him. Obviously, after his 30 for 30 season,
Yeah.
and obviously being ditched for Tom Brady and them going to win a Super Bowl, that can't have been easy for him. But I imagine it was quite a humbling experience for him. I know he's quite a charismatic character, isn't he? But I mean, to be sitting on the bench in New Orleans, to get bounced out the playoffs again early, and then looking over at Tampa and Tom Brady's winning the Super Bowl with a roster that's pretty much the same as what you had last year. It kind of stung a bit, but like I say, this is a good setup for him in New Orleans. He seems to be a really good scheme fit there. Much like Teddy was when he went in and went 5-0 there. I mean, they're not asking him to do an awful lot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're leaning on Kamara heavily. They got a good defense over there, a solid offensive line as well, which has really helped him. So I probably wouldn't say burn, given the defense and how well Carolina's defense played last week. But it's going to be a real test as well, because he's generated some real momentum now as well. Confidence will be high with him. I mean, what was he? 5 touchdowns. I think he was 6 for 6 in the red zone completion percentage as well. So it's going to be a tough test. But one, I think Carolina can cause some problems with, especially with sort of Eric McCoy being out at center again. He's going to miss some time now, and obviously they haven't got Michael Thomas either, which is another sort of good plus for what looks like a really good secondary, to be fair.
All right, so do you think we win? Do you think the Panthers win?
Close. I think it's going to be a lot closer than people think. I mean, people are just looking at the sort of Green Bay score last week and thinking the Saints are going to roll us over. I don't think that's going to be the case. I basically treat week 1 as sort of the final preseason game, where sort of, because I mean, they only had one half and one series of football in the preseason, all the starters. So it takes time. I mean, I know Marcus Davenport's out for the Saints as well, but they've still got enough problems on the defensive front to give the offensive line some difficulty. I think that'll be the key to the game. And whether sort of Brian Burns and Hassan Reddick can get some pressure on the 2 stud tackles that the Saints have got to, and just put Jameis Winston off a little bit, because when he's uncomfortable, that's when he makes mistakes and tries to force things, or at least that's what he did at Tampa. So I think they're the 2 keys for the game, really. I mean, if they can keep it close, maybe sort of home field will come into it a little bit as well. But it's just so hard to tell. I mean, they're obviously going to lean on McCaffrey heavily again. But like I say, the Saints have got a good defense. I know Latimer's out as well, which is something that they might be able to exploit from a sort of mismatch perspective, even though sort of the Jets secondary wasn't great. If Darnold can get it out quickly, go through his reads quickly again, I think the Panthers got a chance.
So you mentioned the preseason. Obviously, the Panthers did not play their starting unit that much in the preseason. Did you see any rust as a result of that in week 1? Or do you think they should have played them more in the preseason? Obviously, other teams do, and we just did not.
I think it was a tricky situation, because obviously you've got the 17 games this year, and it wasn't just the Panthers. I think a lot of teams approached it a little bit differently, whereas it would have been the second game that they'd have seen the starters for the most time. The Panthers decided to wait until sort of week 3 against the Steelers, and considering sort of Tomlin decided to sort of rest all his key men, it was just kind of a bit of a walk in the park sort of thing, really, for them. I mean, it was a little too easy. I mean, I don't know how many of those Steelers defenders made it onto the 53-man roster, but I can't imagine it was that many. And it was just hard to gauge out of it. I mean, it was probably good for Darnold to get some reps in a game situation, and it was nice for the rookies who are going to play a role as the season goes on to get some minutes. But it was just really hard to say. I think because they're going into such an unknown, into the 17 games, and with only 3 preseason games, with sort of an end of preseason bye week, as it were, it was kind of a sort of a trial and error approach. But whether they'll change it next year, I don't know. I mean, only time will tell. I mean, if they go and beat the Saints this week and get some of Houston and the 3-0, I mean, we're not having this conversation, are we? So
Yeah, it's true.
So going forward, do you think the Panthers have a real chance to make the playoffs?
I think if they can get out the first 6 games with 4 wins, I think if they're 4-2 going into week 7, because it's going to get a lot tougher sort of after that. You're only going to need sort of maybe 5-6 more wins after that. That would be sort of the top of my expectations for them to sort of get a 7 seed. At the moment, I think anywhere between 8 to 10 wins would be classed as progress for me after 2 5-11 seasons. Second year of Matt Rule's rebuild, the first with Scott Fitterer as well. So somewhere in the region of 8 to 10 would be sort of real progress. Anything past that would be beyond sort of anyone's wildest dreams, really. Something below that would be, classed as disappointing when you consider the talent they've got. It just all depends on whether the offensive line holds up, whether they can stop the run against very, very good teams. I think that goes missing a bit because, they had a good week last week in week 1, but they were facing Tevin Coleman and rookie Michael Carter, and the Jets were down early, so you can sort of negate that threat from them. You'll probably get a better measure of stick of that this week with Kamara and what the Saints are doing to take some of the heat off Jameis Winston. But say if they can get out the first 6 weeks with 4-2 or better, then I'd probably say their chances increase. But I'd be very surprised if they got above 8 or 9 wins. 10 would probably be the ceiling for me. What do you guys think?
If we could get to 10 wins, I think that would be a huge success. And if we reach double-digit wins, I think it's a success, even if we somehow miss the playoffs. But if we get into the playoffs this year, first year with Darnold as a quarterback, pretty young team, I think that would be a success. But I think 10 wins is probably the ceiling. I think that's a good take.
Yeah, the 10 wins has to be the ceiling because I don't think we beat the Saints this week. I think if they lose to the Texans next week, the season's over. Just play.
They look good against the Jags. They look good.
I know. Good. And if we lose Thursday night against the Texans, let's sign Will Grier back. Let's just play him the rest of the season. Let's just wash it once again. Get the number 1 pick. 10 wins has to be the ceiling, I think. It was just kind of the floor. That's a scary question.
4 or 5? No, I'm just kidding.
It's got to be 5, I think.
It's got to be 5, yeah. 5 or 6 wins.
That'd be so disappointing, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, it would.
Especially as a fan, just mediocrity is the worst. Like, at least if we're bad, we'll get a high draft pick. But if we're just stuck in the middle of the pack, it's just like, I don't know. Just from a fan perspective.
Are you concerned about our 3rd and short, 4th and short? It feels like it's just so predictable, and we never can get those 4th and 1s, 3rd and 1s right on the goal line to go through.
Like the end around of DJ Moore. I know we picked up the first down on that, but I feel like that play easily could have lost 5 yards. It was like 3rd and short. I don't know.
Yeah. Considering they've got a back like Christian McCaffrey that it's not trusted to get that yard. I know they've picked up Royce Freeman, who might be able to come in and help in that area. He's a bit of a stockier running back who can sort of, but it's the push. They don't get any push from the line. You even saw it a couple of times against the Jets. Especially in the second half, it just wasn't good enough on the interior. I know John Miller's off the COVID list now. I actually quite like him with Moton on the right. I think that's quite a solid sort of pair. But whether sort of Pat Elflein's going to raise his game enough, I get why they brought him in. One of the coaches has got the Ohio State connection, and they think they've got something. But I watched every snap of his when he was on the Vikings, and I can tell you now he's not a starting offensive lineman, either at center or guard. There was a reason why the Vikings got rid of him, and the reason why the Jets didn't bring him back after watching him for, I think it was probably about half a season in the end after he was waived. And obviously, I didn't think Cam Irvin was terrible on Sunday. I thought he did okay. He blew a couple. There's always going to be that one play where you look at him and you just think he's going to get the quarterback killed. And I think that was in the second half. So I can't remember who was on him. Blew right past him and sort of almost sort of got to Darnold at that time. But whether he's the answer or not is another big question for me. But I mean, it does concern me. But at the end of the day, it's a case of they don't have a big back. They don't have Mike Davis yet, and hopefully Roach Freeman could be that guy. So I don't think Gio Weber's ready for, and he hasn't really got the build for that anyway. Mm-hmm. So like, hopefully Roach Freeman can come in and sort of do that once he's up to speed.
So I know it's only been 1 week, and I don't want to overreact or make any bold predictions, but with the rookie class, I feel like Jaycee Horn played a good game. Terrace Marshall had a few catches in big situations. How do you feel the Panthers did in the draft? And do you see these rookies, like, do you think they'll eventually contribute a lot more than they did in week 1? Or how do you see them growing during the season?
I think there's potential there. I mean, I think a lot of them were drafted to start or play more a little bit later on, like Deontay Brown, Brady Christensen. I mean, I get why they traded down to get more picks in the second round, but at the same time, they missed out on guys like, I mean, I love Sam Cosmi coming out of Texas. I thought he was fantastic, and I mean, I haven't watched any of the Washington game yet, but I saw him in the preseason for Washington, and he was sensational. Obviously, I mean, JC's fantastic. He's just got that swagger about him, hasn't he? The sort of that alpha mentality thing that we talk about. I actually think the coverage on the touchdown he gave up wasn't terrible. I mean,
I thought it was good coverage.
Yeah, it was a really good throw, and obviously he just got an inch. He was an inch away from sort of batting it down, but that's the fine margins that you get in the NFL rather than in college. He'd have swatted that away, no problem really. I thought Terrace did okay. Tommy Tremble will probably play more once he figures out how to become more of a sort of a pass catcher as well. I mean, I'd be quite intent to throw him in at fullback at the moment, rather than have Giovanni Ricci there, just because he is a better blocker. And then obviously you've got Shi Smith coming back this week, fingers crossed. And then Phil Hoskins would be a development project again, much like sort of Stanley Thomas Oliver was last year. And then Keith Taylor the same. So I'd expect a few of them to come in sort of as the season goes on, similar to what they did last year with the day threes. But it's just, I mean, I was a big Rashawn Slater fan coming out. I mean, if Penei Sewell wasn't there, which I think would have been their top choice. I mean, I think he was top on their draft board from what you hear and things like that. I think it would have been him, but I thought they should have gone with Rashawn Slater. But at the end of the day, they did have a problem at corner, and Dante's out of contract this year as well. So that was probably entering their thoughts as well with someone like JC.
All right. So my last question, you mentioned you're a Vikings fan. You're in Wales, so the primetime games come on way later. What are your just like thoughts and emotions going into a Kirk Cousins primetime game? Are you just sitting there thinking like, why am I even staying up for this? Like, what am I
doing? Not so much now. I mean, it used to be that, and then there was the memorable playoff win in New Orleans, the overtime, the Carl Rudolph touchdown, which I enjoyed. Woke the kids up at about 3:30 in the morning, sort of jumping around, screaming, which the wife wasn't too happy about. But I think there's a lot of stigma surrounding him. I mean, he gets such a rough deal. He's another one who's had sort of no help from his interior O-line in Minnesota. Obviously, they've drafted Christian Darrisaw now, who's hopefully going to come back from injury and do a good job replacing Riley Reef. And they've got one of the best right tackles in the NFL in Brian O'Neill, in my opinion, as well. So, I mean, there's a lot on the line for the Vikings and Cousins, especially this year. I mean, he's got 2 years left and a lot of guaranteed money on his deal. So I'd be surprised if they gave him another contract. So it's basically 2 years and then see what happens after. But Mike Zimmer might not be around by that point if things carry on as it did on Sunday.
That was my next question. How long do you think Mike Zimmer lasts? Do you think he makes the whole season?
I don't think the Will Silver experiment will fire him in the season. I mean, I just don't think they've got that sort of mentality, and especially after all he's done for the organization as well, getting them into playoff contention. I mean, a couple of near misses in NFC Championship games, but I mean, he is on the hot seat. There's no getting away from that, especially with the talent they've got, the money they've invested on defense. And things have just got to get better, as simple as that, because it was just a clown show in terms of discipline. I mean, especially from the offensive line. I mean, it was like they've never played together before. They've never taken a rep in training camp or anything like that. I mean, I know Kirk missed some time by being on the COVID list, but I mean, that's just absolutely no excuse. No excuse. I mean, it was just abysmal. Simple as that, really.
So the last thing I wanted to end on personally is for the game this week. Sorry, Panthers and Saints. Give me a score prediction, and I just want to see if any of us get this any remotely close. What do y'all think? And I'll answer it too. What do y'all think the final score will be, and who's going to win? Obviously,
I'm going to say Panthers 24-21.
Okay.
I'll go 31-29 Panthers. It's going to be a weird score.
I think it's going to be a weird score also, and I think I'm going to go 31-28 Panthers. I got the Panthers
just stealing my pick.
Wait, what did you say? The internet kind of cut out a little bit.
31-29.
Okay, all right. Let me be a little different then. I'll go a little higher scoring. I'm going to go Panthers 35.
35.
Saints 31. 35-31. I'll say that. Panthers on top. I think it'll be close.
Zane Gonzalez, 50-yard field goal to win. 24-21.
John Casey comes back from the dead.
Or whoever we hire as a kicker for this week just blows a wide open game-winning field goal from like the 30-yard line or something. Oh, my gosh.
We're the first NFL team to go 17 weeks with a different kicker.
Yeah, that sounds like it sounds like my fantasy football team, to be honest with you.
Exactly.
Draft it in the final round and then change them week to week.
Waiver wire all day.
All right, who's playing in a dome this week?
Yeah, honestly.
Yeah, or who's playing in Denver. That's basically what I go with.
My last question, my actual last question. What was the Minnesota Miracle like for you?
Indescribable. I actually went out to my uncle. My uncle owns a bar here, so and he's big into NFL as well. So he stayed up, let us, and it opened up, and there was sort of like, we advertised it, and there was sort of like, got a few people there, and it was just sensational, really. Like, to experience something like that, and then you think, but then you go from so high, and then you go to Philly, and you just get trounced all over, and it's just like, what is the point? And it's just the Vikings curse. It's just the Vikings curse of never getting what we deserve. But yeah, as a moment, I mean, it was just magical. It's just why you watch the NFL, isn't it? Just that one moment, the one indecisive moment from a corner where he tries to be the hero and make a big tackle, and the next thing, Stephon Diggs is going from thinking about going out of bounds to run into the end zone, and absolute pandemonium breaking out. I mean, it was unbelievable. All right, well, that's all I got. Connor, you got everything? I think so. I just want to say thank you for coming on. This is a lot of fun. Appreciate that. No problem at all, man. Happy to come on. Yeah, of course. And where can people find you on Twitter and everything? My individual handle is @DeanJones_. Catcrave is Catcrave blog. Yeah, that's it. All righty. Well, check him out. Go follow him on Twitter. Dean, thanks again for coming on. Had a great time. No problem, man. Thank you. Thank you.